For nearly 3 decades, millions of Americans ended their evenings with the same familiar face behind the desk of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Night after night, Johnny Carson delivered perfectly timed monologues, clever interviews, and a calm, almost mysterious presence that made him the undisputed king of late-night television. To the public, Carson often seemed cool, composed, even distant, a professional entertainer who kept his emotions carefully tucked behind the camera lens. But according to the man who sat just a few feet away from him for nearly 30 years, the real story of Johnny Carson was far more complicated and far more human. That man was Doc Severinsen, the flamboyant trumpet player and bandleader who became one of Carson's closest on-stage partners. Now in his late 90s, Doc carries memories of thousands of shows, countless backstage moments, and a version of Carson that most viewers never saw. And when Doc reflects on those years today, he doesn't describe a cold or distant star. Instead, he remembers a man who carefully separated the performer from the person. To television audiences, Carson was always in control. His timing was flawless, his delivery effortless. But Doc says the moment the red studio light turned off, something subtle would change. Carson's shoulders relaxed, the intensity faded, and the polished television host quietly stepped aside. In those off-camera moments, Doc saw a calmer, more observant man, someone who listened carefully, noticed the people around him, and treated the crew with a level of respect that rarely made headlines. According to Doc, Carson understood something many television stars forgot. A show like The Tonight Show didn't run on fame alone. It ran on dozens of technicians, writers, stagehands, and musicians working under enormous pressure every single night. And Carson never took that for granted. After a taping ended, he often thanked crew members by name, not just the celebrity guests or executives, but the lighting operators, camera technicians, and stage managers who kept the entire production moving. Doc also recalls moments that were never meant for public attention. Crew members dealing with medical bills or family emergencies sometimes found unexpected help arriving quietly from Carson. A tuition payment for a child, assistance during a crisis, even help covering major life events like weddings. But there was always one condition: absolute silence. Carson didn't want gratitude, publicity, or credit. In fact, Doc says the host often became uncomfortable when people tried to thank him openly. Of course, not everyone saw this side of Carson. Some celebrities who appeared on the show described him as distant or difficult. But Doc believes those impressions came from brief encounters during an incredibly demanding job. A guest might sit across from Carson for a 7-minute interview and walk away thinking they understood him. But Doc witnessed the other 23 hours of Carson's day: the rehearsals, the backstage conversations, the quiet leadership that kept the show running smoothly for decades. Carson's reputation for strict professionalism also contributed to the misunderstanding. During tapings, he expected precision. A missed cue, a poorly timed joke, or a technical error could throw off the rhythm of a live broadcast watched by millions. When those mistakes happened, Carson addressed them directly. To outsiders, that could look like coldness. But Doc insists it was simply discipline, the kind required to maintain one of television's most demanding productions. Yet Carson also knew when to trust the people around him. He gave Doc and the band remarkable creative freedom, allowing them to shape the musical energy of the show. In an industry where hosts often controlled every second of airtime, Carson believed talented people should be allowed to do their jobs without interference. That trust built loyalty that lasted for decades. Looking back now, Doc Severinsen says the real Johnny Carson was never the mysterious figure some critics imagined. He was a private man from a different generation, someone who valued professionalism, boundaries, and quiet decency over public displays of warmth. He didn't chase attention for good deeds, and he rarely explained himself to critics. But for those who worked beside him night after night, the truth became clear over time. Behind the perfectly timed jokes and the legendary desk sat a man who understood responsibility, not just to an audience, but to the people who made the show possible. And as Doc reflects on those years today, one belief remains unchanged: the Johnny Carson the public saw was only part of the story. The real one revealed himself when the cameras stopped rolling, in small acts of fairness, quiet generosity, and a work ethic that helped define an entire era of television. That, according to Doc, is the Johnny Carson history should remember.